You listening? I want you to hear this. So you cannot experience your wholeness as long as you believe that someone or something is against you. I want you to hear that again. You cannot experience this truth of wholeness as long as you are in the belief that someone or something is against you. And if we truly desire to get to that place of wholeness, that place of inner peace, that place, as the author of our book that we're going to be using, The Eye of the Storm, calls the center of the hurricane, that place where there's absolute stillness and peace, then we have to start with the foundational principle that is talked about in the Bible that says, if God is for us, then who can be against us? So we have to back it up even one more to say, yes, do we really believe that God is for us? That the universe is here supporting us, that that's the innate truth, even in those times where it doesn't feel like it, and we certainly can't see it operating in our lives. So this series that we're going to be working on over the next several weeks invites us to live into that awareness, gives us the tools, gives us the understanding that no one and nothing is against us. As I mentioned a minute ago, it's based on the book The Eye of the Storm by the Dr. Reverend Gary Simmons. It's been around for a long time, and it's one of those foundational books that I think can truly help us to begin to live from this truth. But I know that there's been times in my life where I've had to question this. Like, how can this be true? Look at what's happening around me. Look at what's happening in my own life. Look at all the problems that are going on in our world. I would imagine that no one listening here hasn't experienced people or situations that felt against them, against us as individuals. Whether it would be somebody took something from us, betrayed us, threatened us, taken advantage of us. We've all had, at least from our human perspective, those times where it certainly feels like somebody or some situation is not working in our favor. And I could certainly relate to the author when he writes this. He says, in my 30 years of practicing martial arts, I've broken my fingers, wrists, ankles, toes, and ribs. I've been knocked out, choked unconscious, stabbed, and cut open, all in the practice of martial arts. And yet, I have never actually been attacked by someone trying to hurt me. He goes on to say, in my relationships with others, I've had my heart broken, my butt kicked, my ego bruised. I've been stabbed in the back by a friend. I've been raked over the coals by a boss and pounced on by my wife. You know, isn't it interesting that the metaphors that we use to describe our relationships almost have built into them this idea of attack, even though in most of our relationships we haven't had the experience of the physical kind of attacking that our metaphors would allude to, but it certainly can feel that way. Our uncomfortable feelings, those unpleasant sensations that arise when we have that experience of somebody at least appearing to attack us, the thoughts that arise are proof that we're being threatened in some way, that we need to be protected. And what this series invites us to consider is, to borrow an old line from the Pogo comic strip, I don't know how many of you remember that, I've met the enemy, and it is me. It is what's going on within me that is creating this experience that I'm having of feeling attacked. So the enemy that we're called to overcome is our own brain, is our own conditioning, is our own subconscious drivers that give us this illusion that somehow something is against us. Science is discovering that in our early human development, we first evolved a reptilian brain. It's right up here, it's right front and center. And this brain developed and used instinct and used muscle memory to ensure our survival. Because in that early development, we were, as human beings, under physical attack by the things around us, by the predators that existed at that time. And then over millions of years, as we have continued to evolve, we developed a limbic system in our brains. And this was to allow us to process and store feelings, emotions, memories, control over our flight, fight, or freeze instincts that we had, and the reactions that we've experienced. And these all get stored in our subconscious. So that's where all of this primarily lives. What drives it comes out of not necessarily our conscious awareness, but our subconscious. And then ultimately, our brains did evolve this neocortex. So those are the three main areas that we use to process information. And this became responsible for language, for reasoning, for abstract thought, for imagination, and for consciousness itself, that we could now be consciously present and consciously choose how we experience that. We're still in this phase of our human evolution where much of the input that we receive is processed by our subconscious, processed by this reptilian and limbic brain system. All this data comes in, and those are the main processing centers that decide what to do with that information. And it is that process that uniquely colors our experience for each of us. If you've ever had an experience where multiple people in the room and something happened, I can guarantee you that almost every person in there had a slightly different, if not completely different, experience of it. Some it may have felt like what somebody said was a threat. Somebody else might have been, as their first thought, wow, I wonder what's going on with them. And it had, and took none of it in as something that was directed towards them or against them. Many of us, and I know I was certainly in this boat until I started doing this work, believe that our observation skills are pretty good. Just to poll in here, how many think you're pretty good at observing what's going on around you? Most of us do. So I would like us to test that theory this morning with this little clip here. Go for it, Nick.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go!
And you know, the reason that some of us missed it, now I have to tell you, I've seen this and used this multiple times, and so I see it every time now because I now know it's there. But the reason that often we miss these things is because in every second, there are 400 billion bits of information available, and yet our brain in that 1 second can only process 2,000 bits of information. So the brain has to decide out of the 4 billion available, what are the 2,000 that I need to pay the most attention to? Now, in this case, you were watching you were focused on watching how many passes got made. And so it ignored other bits of information because they weren't deemed necessary in that moment. And these 2,000 bits become our reality. They become, at least by default, what we believe to be is really happening. And we fill in the rest. We color in the rest with our thoughts, with our feelings, with our judgments, with our past experiences. So, which 2,000 bits that we choose to receive are guided by our past experiences and the established sort of neural pathways that we've already got going on in our own internal system. The subconscious tries to be smart for us and determine how we should best receive all the information that we're getting. So here's another clip I want to show you that also informs us a little bit more about how our brains work. Go for it, Nick. So just stare at the dot. So how many of you saw color when the picture first popped up? Yeah, a lot of people did. And it's really the brain filling in what it expects to be there. And so when we're looking at something from a certain perspective and we have an idea of what that's supposed to look like, the brain will go ahead and fill in this case, color that wasn't present. It is something that it does to help us accommodate how we interact with the world. And the conclusion that we can draw from these two different awareness tests is that all perception is in fact misperception, or at least incomplete perception. It is often incomplete because it's colored by our personal experiences, our memories. It is mitigated by our beliefs and our values and our emotions. Just as Matt was talking about this morning, that was perfect. He had no idea what I was going to be speaking of today. But, you know, we have some automatic go-tos of buffet items that we love, and we can sometimes be blinded to all of the other choices that might be there unless we are willing and conscious about making those choices. While it often feels as if things are happening to us, it is our thoughts and our feelings that create the mental and emotional states that influence our response, that tell us, am I safe? Am I in danger? And we project onto those events in an unconscious way the meaning of what's happening, the relevance of what's happening. And we compensate by filling in the missing pieces. We use our own beliefs, our own impressions, our own past experiences, and our own feelings about ourselves in order to make a more complete picture, because we haven't been able to take all of it in. I want to tell you a little story that helps, I think, highlight this, and maybe you can relate in some way. But this was about a particular minister, and this is a true story. It's a minister who was in a large church, and he hears that while he was out of town, the board president had called a special meeting without him there. And then immediately upon hearing that, within an hour, the board president called and canceled a standing luncheon that they have every week. Said, sorry, I can't make it this week. Well, as it often happens, the minister started getting upset and suspicious about what was going on. And then the church secretary comes and tells him that the board president had been snooping around in his office after hours when he wasn't there. And the minister's imagination started coming up with all of these scenarios about what was happening and began to believe that the board was conspiring to terminate his employment there. And then he started thinking about all these other events that had been happening in the recent months, and he started filling in, oh yeah, there was when such and such did that, yeah, I can see how now that's related to this going on. And at the end of the week, he received a call from the board, from someone else, that said that they were calling a special meeting to happen directly after the Sunday services this coming week, and was told that it would be brief and to the point when he tried to inquire about, well, what is this special meeting going to be about? And certain that he was going to be fired that day, he, had loaded himself up with armor, In fact, he was telling himself, I'm going to fight this, They're not just going to be able, we're going to, get rid of this board and things will be okay again. And so as the special meeting was starting, the board president got up and said, we're just so grateful for all your years of service, and, we're just certain that if that event ever comes where you would leave us, we want to do something around that. And the minister just, he sort of resigns himself into the fact. And the next announcement was, the board has called a special meeting and with unanimous agreement has agreed to present to the membership a proposal to use the large reserve fund we have to buy you a house so that, you will be able to live and celebrate, and we want to celebrate the many years of your dedicated service. Well, you can imagine. And I'm sure you've probably had this kind of situation where you have built it up to mean something and then you show up and it's something totally different that you'd never even considered. And all he could say is, I was just so grateful that I hadn't started my own campaign earlier in the week to rally people to get rid of the board, to try and get people on because not knowing what was going on. So you can see how that, our ability to perceive and understand gets this whitewash of all of this information from our internal system, which may or may not be factual at all. And he also said that he learned a really important lesson, that we have to see the situation right before trying to set it right. That's going to be something else as we get later on in the service. We'll look at ways that we can begin to do that. Our struggle to integrate our human nature and our spiritual essence, when we are not conscious of this, oftentimes ends up as a result of being a house divided within itself. Our human nature and our spiritual nature are at odds with one another. Humanly, we're motivated to get our needs met, to feel safe, and to be okay about ourselves. That's the whole focus of what we call our ego, or this other part, our limbic and our reptilian brain. That's all it cares about. Am I safe? Am I okay? And am I getting my needs met? Our spiritual essence of ourselves, our soul, if you want to call it that word, is moved by a transcendent purpose that tells us, that moves us to be motivated by our soul's intention to connect and to embrace and to serve the divine. So we've got these two parts of ourselves that this series is going to look to support us in at least taking a step towards integrating them more in a way that really serves not only us, but it serves our transcendent purpose. The author shares this. He says, transforming the challenges in our lives requires our ability to become present to life. That means present in all parts including our neocortex, including our ability to know, oh, whatever's unfolding right here, I may not be seeing and understanding it all. I might have to ask some more questions. I might have to be willing to suspend my judgment for a moment until I know more about what's unfolding. Conflict and adversity are our midwives. They are the vehicle, the opportunity that we have to begin to live from a more whole place with both our human and our spiritual nature, because they allow us the opportunity to reconcile our human frailties and to know that we are also innately whole. It's not either or, it's both and. From a spiritual perspective, conflict arises to get our attention and to help us find our way back to wholeness. That's why it's there. Conflict is simply a mirror of where we are disconnected from our wholeness. That's a really important part as we walk through this, that conflict is simply a mirror unto us. It's not about them, it's a mirror unto us of where we're disconnected from our wholeness. Nearly every conflict arises out of a belief in lack. Whether it's we don't have enough money or security or time or energy or intelligence or creativity or support, when we are whole, when we are complete, when we lack nothing, there is no place for conflict in our experience. And paradoxically, it's this illusion of lack that compels us to avoid conflict. The very thing that can bring us back to our wholeness, we run as fast as we can from, and that keeps us from realizing that we are whole and complete even in our seeming brokenness. In the coming weeks, we're going to experience how we can embrace conflict so that it can be that vehicle and it can teach us what it is that we might not otherwise learn and lead us to that place that's available always at the very center of the storm, that place where there is peace and there is stillness, even as storms rage around us. One of the ways I want to invite us today, a little practice that you can bring into your experiences, is to learn when we get triggered by conflict, when all of a sudden we feel that something is against us, like the copier this morning. It was not supporting me. So I've been trying to figure out, how does that connect me to my wholeness, to not have? But it did let me go to the infinite realm of possibilities, like, okay, what's another way we're going to do this morning? If this way isn't available, how do we make this happen? But to begin to know that we can, in any given moment, ground ourselves, and also this experience that we can bring into our body so that it can be in a more receptive space to what's happening within us, called heart math. And perhaps you might have experienced heart math a little bit. So as we move into our meditation, I'm going to invite you to just experience these two tools that can help you take a pause for a moment when conflict seems to be showing up in your world, and perhaps then allow you to be open to how it is that you can move through this in a different way. So if you would just, right where you're at, just allow yourself to get comfortable. If they aren't already, I would invite you to put your feet on the ground so that both feet are flat, pressed against the floor. Perhaps just check even your spine posture and see if it needs to be elongated a little bit. Close your eyes if you're comfortable so that you can really be focused on what's unfolding within you. And as you become aware of that breath moving in and out of your body, that one constant that is a part of every moment of this human and spiritual journey. As you take that next breath in, direct that air, imagine it going all the way down to your feet and through your feet down into the earth. Breathing again and letting that energy just connect you deeply to the earth below you. This nurturing, rich abundance of life energy. Feel yourself become one with it. And in your next breath, see if you can't breathe in that energy, imagining it coming through the top of your head, coming from the realm of unconditional love, of wholeness. And breathe that down into your body. And in this time and space, place your attention now on your heart space, that place physically in the center of your chest, but also spiritually, that place in which you are divinely whole. And bring into this space the memory or the image of someone or something that you deeply love. They could be in your life now. They could be in the spirit realm. It could be a pet. Bring them into your mind's eye and send them your love. And know that you can return to this space whenever feel the winds of conflict arising around you, and rest here for a few moments. And as you are ready, you can begin to bring your attention back to this time and space, feeling and sensing that same groundedness happening below you, and also bringing with you that energy of unconditional love that is the very energy of God, that is the very energy alive in you. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And so our invitation this week is to see if you can't begin to use these two simple tools when you find yourself swirling in those outer winds of the storm, being battered about, being triggered. May not change what's happening, but at least for a few moments, it will allow you to find that place at the center of the storm and bring you back to your heart. Bless you as you navigate this life. For those who are at home, we want you to also have that experience of giving and receiving, and so you can go to our website, centerofunity.org, go to the Give page, and if you scroll down that page, you will find some pictures, and you just pick on the one that resonates with you, and that will give you your affirmation for the week. So let us take all that we share today into our hands and into our hearts and bless it together. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I give, all that I receive, and all that I am.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as the Father, family all are we. Let me walk with my family in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
So the affirmation I got today is, are you being the way of God or in the way of God? Something to think about this week as we go, knowing our prayer for protection together. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Have a beautiful week. All right, yay.